Committee, a regular meeting that we're having here, and I'd like to welcome my colleagues Joe Buscaino and Paul Krikorian. Let's begin this meeting, and I'm going to start with comment cards, and we'll hear all comment cards on all items to begin with at this meeting. And we have two comment cards for item number 1.
And would you like me to read them?
Please read item. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Yes, item number 1 are reports from the Municipal Facilities Committee and the Board of Water and Power Commissioners relative to the assignment of space and authority to execute lease terms with the Department of Water and Power in the 221 North Figueroa Plaza building. And this has also been referred to the Energy and Environment Committee.
Thank you, sir. And as there are lots of comment cards today, I'm going to limit the comments to 1 minute per comment. For item 1, we have Jack Humphreyville, followed by Fred Pickle. Please step forward, gentlemen. And Mr. Pickle, did you want to present, or did you want to add a public comment to the item?
I think a public comment is sufficient.
Okay. All right, sir. So the first card I have is Mr. Humphreyville. If you would defer to Mr. Pickle, fine.
I had three points to make on this item. One is, does DWP have the money and the rates for this? They're saying it takes 1,000 more people. That's $146 million. That exceeds the labor budget in 2020. Two, do they need this much time and this much space? They're allowing a period longer than was needed to build the LA Aqueduct to rehab those floors. Three, my concern is getting to a fair market price for this. And I think the way to get to that is not through appraisals, but through a broker. And if a broker is not available, I believe this contract should have a most favored nations clause added to it, where the price drops to the first arm's length negotiated price for facilities in this complex and subject to the cap of the original price.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pickle, our ratepayer advocate. Thank you, sir. Mr. Humphreyville.
My name is Jack Humphreyville. I'm affiliated with the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. I want to thank you in advance for approving this lease. That is an estimated ripoff of $20 million for the ratepayers. I would also like to thank the mayor for pressuring the spineless board to approve this above-market lease that will provide $12 million to help the city close its $85 million budget deficit next year. Why would I take this attitude when I've been critical? This screwing of the ratepayers is just another example of why voters do not trust the mayor and the city council. It will also help voters realize that Prop HHH, the $1.2 billion bond, homeless bond, is not in their best interest because of the failure of the city council and the mayor to establish budget priorities. It will also help voters realize that you have not used the Metro local return dollars in an appropriate manner. Again, thank you for destroying our faith and confidence in City Hall.
Okay, following Mr. Humphreyville there was a comment card submitted, and it's Christina. Oh, Christina, I'm sorry. And is it Nuna?
Yes.
Commissioner Nuna, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I think it speaks to the fact that I have served as a commissioner for over a decade, first as the president of the Convention Center, and then for the past 7 years on the board of DWP. Never once have I felt so compelled as to meet before a committee to offer my expertise and my stance on a situation that I think is very, very ill executed. And I know that I only have 30 seconds left, so I won't have time to read my public statement that I made at the last board hearing. But I hope and desire that you take time to read it. And this isn't about $40 million. This is going to cost the ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars. And please reach out to me if you have further questions. But I appreciate you listening to me and taking my notes and thoughts into consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Well, colleagues, what I'd like to do then is, since some concerns have been brought to bear, do we have Bernice Hollins here from the CAO's office? Yeah, Ms. Hollins, right in the front row. If you could present on why CAO's office feels that we should move forward with this, that would be terrific.
Certainly. Bernice Hollins, Office of the CAO. For this item, I'll be representing the Municipal Facilities Committee. The Municipal Facilities Committee took action, final action at its meeting held on September 29 to approve the terms as proposed here. It would essentially enable DWP to occupy 4 floors in the 221 tower. That includes 2 floors that have been fully built out and 2 unfinished floors for a period of up to 10 years. DWP Board of Commissioners subsequently took action at its October 4th meeting to also approve the terms that are now presented for council consideration.
And Ms. Hollins, what was the vote there?
I believe, I'm sorry, I was out of town, but I believe it was 4-1 for approving, 1 not. The proposed terms were negotiated in good faith based on comparable market rates with an intention of giving public benefit to both the city and DWP. DWP also hired its own in-house appraisal to review the terms, and a substantial presentation was made to the board upholding the terms that were presented. Basically, the terms are summarized on page 2 of, 1 and 2 of the attachment 1, but the base rate is $2.48. That was found to be a comparable rate compared to other downtown facilities that are comparable to the Figueroa Plaza. Other terms that were negotiated, DWP would reimburse the city for its proportionate share of costs that we invested on the 2 finished floors. DWP would also contribute up to $5 million to complete the cost of the 2 unfinished floors. This is consistent with the policy that we have in place to basically do cost recovery from special funds so that the general fund does not incur those costs. Other tenants, such as building and safety, who have access to special funds, also reimburse the city for their proportionate share of build-out cost, also in the 221 tower. Over the 10-year term of the lease, the city would collect approximately $37 million in lease revenues. That does not include the one-time payment of $3 million that we would collect upfront for the reimbursement of the completed floors. These monies would be used to basically cover a proportionate share of the debt service that the city pays each year to cover the cost that we incur for the original acquisition of the property. Again, we also have a similar reimbursement policy. Building and safety also pays for their proportionate share because they have access to special funds. The remaining balance would be then used to cover the proportionate cost of operating expenses. Any monies above that would be used to address any unanticipated cost escalations. And we really don't anticipate a significant amount of residual funds. But if there's any residual funds over the 10-year term, those monies would then be reinvested back into the property.
Okay. And a couple of quick questions since I have you here. And that is, you mentioned full cost recovery. Can you break that down in the simplest terms? For example, at the end of the day, what will taxpayers be out of pocket for this agreement?
So in total, it's $40.8 million is what we would receive. $3.7 million of that is coming back to the city for the improvements that we've already made. Roughly $17.4 million will go towards the proportionate share of debt service. And then we're projecting about $11.2 million in operating costs. That's specific to the DWP space for things like utilities, the cleaning expenses, those types of items.
And so then, with all you just said, what is the net loss to the city because of this?
The net loss, or you profit, or
no,
surplus?
So you're talking about a net surplus and not a net loss.
Yeah. It right now there's about $8.5 million over the 10-year term of the lease that isn't tied to a specific cost. And again, we negotiated this on a 2.48 monthly rental cost, and again, that's comparable to other downtown rents for similar properties. So again, it's difficult over a 10-year term to know whether or not we're going to have any type of cost escalations. A portion of it could go towards unanticipated utility escalations. So any of that money above what would be going towards the actual cost incurred for maintaining the DWP space, again, would be reinvested in maintaining that property.
And you've been in the trenches on this from the very beginning. Can you imagine any other scenario that would be better than the one that we are asked to approve today?
Well, as I said, we did negotiate in good faith. There was a lot of negotiating back and forth between the terms proposed between the city and DWP, and these were the terms that we felt were best for both parties. So, no, I don't believe that we could negotiate a better term at this point.
And there, to your knowledge, were there any other alternatives that involved going somewhere else that would have been more cost effective or any of that?
DWP is present. They can speak to those, but just in general, they have outgrown their capacity at their current headquarters. They have exceeding demands for workstations, and then the benefit of just being located directly across from the street. That saves a lot of in terms of commuter expenses. Any place else that they would have moved, it would have required a lot of ground travel, a lot of lost time and productivity. I don't know if DWP was able to, I believe they were able to quantify what those benefit gains were. I don't have that number available, but again, the gain for being able to work directly across the street as opposed to having to lease space somewhere else is certainly advantageous to the department.
And perhaps the DWP could come to the table then if that would be possible. That would be great. Thank you, Ms. Hollins. Sir, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So some of the comments that were made and Ms. Hollins' report, would you add to that or shed some light from your perspective?
So she covered most everything very well and cited a number of the reasons the DWP board did vote to move forward with this. We looked at the property. We had an appraiser come in and compared that against a number of other properties, full cost per square foot to full cost per square foot. That was in the range of what the appraiser came in with and said that was a reasonable deal. We then had Goldman Sachs come in and look at it and said it's reasonable for the downtown area. The proximity was very important. The conservative calculation was a $3.5 million savings in productivity by just having it on a 5 or 6 minute walk versus getting in the car and having to drive across town. There is a current pending request right now for 675 office spaces in order to implement the goals of the rate increase. That's an immediate need. This property will provide about 375 to 400 spaces for office workers. We still need to do a long-term space plan. This does not include any review of the JFB, our headquarters building, which is 50 years old and does need a study to look at how it might be what we call restacked to house more employees or a better kind of structure. That sort of process is going to take several years and several more years to implement. All the TIs here are done by CBRE, and so the cost for occupancy and the duration of the lease, which can be terminated at year 8, is relevant and appropriate to our needs.
Any comments that either you would have from the comments that Mr. Pickle made or the commissioner?
We did hear at length from the commissioner's comments and very much appreciated them. The board did decide to move forward. And then ratepayer advocate Pickle, the number of employees here to go in this building are included in the rate plan, and some of the locations would be for contract employees to do conversion of our very large financial system project. And per our projections, we do need this much time and space, and again, still do have to do a comprehensive space study, which will take several years to do.
Okay. Anything to add, Ms. Hollins?
Just as a quick note, one of the other advantages is that the space is immediately available. Like I said, 2 floors are already completed. The city certainly wants to achieve full occupancy of the towers as soon as possible, so it's mutually beneficial to both the city and DWP.
Okay, terrific. Just one question in relation to the upfront lump sum of $3.734 million. When will that be provided, the DWP payment?
It would be provided upon final council approval of
Okay.
the action.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, any questions or comments about this?
Excuse me, I realize this goes against legal norms, but at the same token, I felt as if I could not express my thoughts given the 1 minute requirement, and I feel that you have asked legitimate questions and you have entered a discussion for over 5 to 6 minutes with these two individuals. And I would like at least an extra minute to express my thoughts and concerns.
Okay, Commissioner, and we're going out of keeping with the meeting, which we are legally bound to follow. You were allowed to make your comment
Why was I only allowed a minute and they're allowed to speak for
because you attended and filled in a general comment card. Otherwise, we could have made other accommodations. But you did submit your letter, and it's very comprehensive. So I would like to open the floor to my colleagues if they have questions or concerns at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
The importance of getting reimbursed here as quickly as possible, I think, is important. You mentioned the same question I had, that upon council approval, we will see those reimbursements come through. Is that my understanding?
Yes, it would just take time. Our usual processing time is usually maybe about 2 weeks to just process the accounting work, and it will be almost instantaneous. And again, these monies would all be reinvested into work that's going on at the tower currently.
And forgive me, if you can explain to me, prior to the fire, who was housed at 221?
For these 6 floors, it was a private law firm, so it's backfilling that space. At one point, the housing department was slated to move in, and so the floors were built out based to those specifications.
And the John Ferraro building, you guys are all maxed out there?
DWP is.
DWP is right.
Thank you. Mr. Krikorian?
So I suppose in this committee, we're viewing this from the general services perspective, and in the next committee, they'll be viewing it from the DWP perspective. But I have to say I'm nonetheless uneasy with being asked to approve a significant lease with, prior to that space study being completed, without having a real understanding of what the long-term needs of the department will be, with questions being raised by a commissioner and Dr. Pickle, notably. I don't feel like I'm prepared to say that I feel comfortable with this. And we've had 5 minutes to consider it or so.
Right.
So at this point, I can't say that I feel comfortable approving this with the limited information that's been before us and the questions that have been raised by the ratepayer advocate in particular, whose expertise I always turn to on DWP matters.
And I'm in agreement with you, sir. I think that we should hold it in committee and just process the information that we've received and the comments that we've received and talk about getting more information so that we're comfortable before we move forward on such an important decision.
Now, would that, though, prevent the E2 committee from proceeding with their? I mean, I suppose so it would be helpful probably to have this drawn out from both committees and
I'm not sure at this exact moment what that would entail. Would that possibly, I would imagine, could necessitate a scenario wherein we have a special committee hearing if that is the case. But to Mr. Krikorian's point, it doesn't sit well with me either just to approve the recommendations as is without additional scrutiny.
And there have been cases where one committee has continued the item, and then the other committee that it was referred to, they were able to hear it, and then it went back to this committee, or the original committee.
And Mr. Espinosa, are we up against any, or Ms. Hollins, any time certain looming deadline that is critical?
There is a revenue impact. We budgeted, I believe it was $3.48 million when we anticipated that DWP would move in at the beginning of the fiscal year. At that time, we had initially negotiated for 6 floors. Now it's down to 4 floors. But there will be a revenue loss taken to the city just with the reduction in space and then any additional delays in executing the lease. However, that said, we will still, of course, work with your staff to address any concerns that this committee has and to provide whatever information that we have. But of course, we would need DWP to speak to their space demands. And that's information that we would not be able to provide ourselves.
I would definitely commit to a great sense of urgency so that we don't, draw this out, considering that there are fiscal impacts.
Yes.
But to Mr. Krikorian's concern, it does feel like we haven't had the chance to process these concerns, and I think we owe it to ourselves to do that
Certainly.
before we move forward. Mr. Wright, would you like to add anything additional to that? Do you see any issues with taking this back and getting it re-agendized so we can consider what has been said?
No, we do have that sense of urgency for the staffing to meet the goals of the rate plan. We do need to have additional staff to, engineer the projects, to start succession planning,
Okay.
to start the technology processes. So there is a pressure on space, but we can delay.
All right. Well, seeing as we may not have a regularly scheduled Entertainment and Facilities Committee for another 4 weeks, but we could certainly have a special meeting within 2 and just kind of caucus on what this information means and how to process it vis-a-vis the dual referral. So that's my commitment. That's what we'll do. That's what I'd recommend, colleagues.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Without objection, let's do just that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So back to cards.
Yes, and to clarify, that item was officially continued.
Officially continued. Thank you. And with a sense of urgency. So this is a somewhat new arrangement in terms of hearing the public and agenda item comment early and first. So let's go with, we have a comment card on item 3 from Jacqueline. I'm so bad at reading, but the last name starts with an I. Yeah, at least I said Jacqueline. I hope that's right. Okay. Say what? Oh. Yes, please.
Hi. My name is Jackie, and I'm here on behalf of Community Health Councils. We're a health advocacy organization in South LA. So I'm just here to offer up my support for item number 3 around EBT access, requiring EBT farmers markets on city property. And we look forward, our organization, to continuing to work with you and figuring out the implementation of that. And thank you for your leadership in bringing this important issue up. And also kind of hope to look for the future to have EBT, required and accepted at all farmers markets, regardless of whether they're on public or private land. But this is a huge first step, so we would just want to support that.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Excuse me, and for the record, pronounce your last name?
It's Elam.
Elam. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And colleagues, what I'd like to do on item 3 is continue the item, item 3 without objection. Thank you, Mr. Corey, and that is exactly what we'll do. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
And that brings us to public comment for item 4. Would you please read item 4 for the record, Mr. Espinosa?
Item number 4 is a motion from Council Members Martinez and Krikorian relative to the General Services Department's contract through U.S. Communities.
Thank you so much. And we have several comments on this, starting with Paul Burke, followed by James Dantona, or Jim. James Dantona.
Mr. James.
That's right. Followed by Glenda Shipley. Do we have Mr. Burke? All right, Mr. Burke, please step forward.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time. On behalf of Associated Los Angeles, I wanted to thank you for the time to hear this issue today. Associated has been a business partner with the City of Los Angeles since 1928. We employ 21 people in our facility in the Boyle Heights area. We are proud to be woman-owned and hire reentry employees. In 2010, Associated entered bankruptcy and was purchased by Stephen Engineering. We kept the location and the employee count intact. We thank you for hearing our plight. Associated and the other contractors here today have been patiently awaiting the RFP from the city. We want very badly to be able to compete for this business again, and I think we all believe that we will win the business. We have always operated in good faith and trusted the city would do the same. This issue today about the city being unprepared to issue a new RFP and hence resorting to piggybacking off of a U.S. communities contract is not about us, Associated, or about the other vendors being forced out. It is about the city not having prepared for this deadline, which has been looming for 4 years, and this lack of preparation leading to the punishment of good and loyal business partners. We understand that a cost analysis has been done, and while we have not seen it, we also have done one ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And now, Mr. James D'Antona, followed by Glenda Shipley, which will be followed by Bruce Stalker. I hope I got that right.
Good afternoon, council members. Jim D'Antona, Chief of Staff for Councilwoman Nuri Martinez. I want to thank you, Councilman O'Farrell and your staff, for getting this on the agenda right away. You know, this specific discussion goes back to June when Councilwoman was chair of this committee and we were working on this specific. We thought there was some solution, but apparently there isn't. And at issue is the transparency that we in the city council have always wanted in our processes, and in specifically contracting. In most cases, we want to see that there has been a fair process. Policies the city council has put forward have been implemented, specifically like local preference. As I know, Councilman Krikorian, you've been working on a long time. Certainly, we'd love to partner to see if we can fix that issue. We know it takes a charter change, but what is being brought to light in this motion is the role of this purchasing agent in the city. Our council and mayor have greater oversight over what happens at the propriety departments and smaller level contracts than we do over what this purchasing agent is in charge of. This is not a knock on staff, it's how our city is set up. So in that process, unfortunately, we can't insert ourselves in these discussions for contracting. In this case, there isn't going to be a bid process before the purchasing agent switch contracts, right? And I apologize, can I just go a few seconds over? That'd be great. Thank you.
Your staff, so you're reporting on behalf of your
Appreciate that.
boss.
They tell us that the staff did the analysis and that where they're going to make the switch to contracts, this will be the best number. And unfortunately, as explained to me, they won't be able to share that data until they've made the award. Then we can see if we were right or wrong, and then we could potentially go about canceling the contract if it was incorrect. Unfortunately, there's no transparency in this process, and only after and only if we realize to ask the question, will there be some light shine on it. If we want a simple and easy process, this is very easy. But when questions are raised about the contracts, we have no ability to bring those questions forward and review those questions. So with this motion, the councilwoman thinks it would be prudent for a written report to come back and discuss this purchasing agent's role and whether council can or would like to amend that process or at minimum add in some role for council. Additionally, as we understand the GSD process going forward, they're not going to have a bid process on this contract, but the councilwoman believes that for fiscal responsibility's sake, we should always have more than one bidder, purveyor of products because that competition gives the taxpayers a better price on supplies. So with this U.S. Communities contract, the councilwoman's concerned we won't be getting their best price, and so we hope the committee can get GSD to commit to a bid process for not just this one, but for all contracting processes.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You got it. Jim D'Antona, representing Nuri Martinez in Council District 6. Thank you so much. Glenda Shipley will be followed by Bruce. I think it's Stalker, but I could be wrong.
Yes.
My apologies. Am I right? Yes. Oh, good. Followed by Mike Crestonberry. Oh.
Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us and let us participate in this venue. I am Glenda Shipley. I work for All Phase Electric Supply, CED, which has been in California since 1957. And what I'm trying to say in my I have very much respect for the people in the city that do the purchasing and are awarding this contract, but they haven't been able to tell me anything ahead of time so that I could say, well, I have a single source agreement you could use, or, is there something that we could all give you so you have a better analysis? And then also I was told, just if you could get people in the field to email us and say that they're concerned because the distributor that's getting awarded the contract did not get the contract when the 5 of us bid it before. So they were always high. So we thought we'd like to see the analysis because we believe that we're probably somewhere between 20 and 30% lower than this community's contract, because these are small communities, and I don't think that they would give the city the kind of pricing that you need.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Shipley.
that we've been dedicated to.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And we'd like to see our contracts extended until this is resolved.
I got to stick to the 1-minute rule here. That's all right, Mr. Stalker.
Okay, glad to be in front of the committee. My name is Bruce Stalker. I'm with Royal Wholesale, which is a division of CED. And we have the same capabilities that you guys are, meaning that the city is going after to do a contract. And not having an opportunity to bid on this I see as not being fair. I think that when we're talking about the taxpayer paying money for material for us to keep our standards up within our city, there should be an opportunity for everyone to bid on it, especially the 5 that's already been part of the contract for more than 10 years. I've been calling the city since 2005, and each year we all know we have to compete against one another, and right now that's being taken away from us, and that's what we see as being unfair. And so we're just asking the opportunity to bid on the same particular bill of material that this one particular contractor is bidding on right now without being cut out. And right now we're being cut out.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mike Crestonberry, followed by Andrew Ipson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak before the committee. Our company is One Source Distributors. We've been around for many years, as the others have, since '83, founded by Bob Zemrup, Sr., minority business, focused heavily into the greater Southern California marketplace. One of the tenets of the City of Los Angeles has always been competitive bidding. We've been a part of it. We've practiced that. We've been committed to this competitive bidding to get the best cost and the best service value to not only the city but our other clients. So I feel that this is somewhat different from what I have seen in the city of LA for many, many years. We believe there's been plenty of time to get a bid out, and we're more than happy to respond and work extra hard to make sure we get a bid put together in a short period of time. The U.S. Communities is based on some small municipalities. It's not the kind of pricing for the city of L.A. I do believe that the cost for the U.S. Communities is far higher than what you realize from competitive bidding with 4 suppliers today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Andrew Ipson will be followed by Jack Mcbride, our final card.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Andrew Ipson, representing Graybar, and we're the ones that hold the U.S. Communities contract. And I just want to let you know we have been dealing with the County of Los Angeles for years with the U.S. Communities contract. It's a very competitive contract, and we have, as opposed to some of the comments, we have been bidding multiple market baskets throughout the past few months. I will say that Graybar has been in LA since the 30s, so we've been around for quite a bit of time. We have 185 employees in 4 locations in the county, so we are a big supporter of the city and the county of LA.
All right, thank you.
My name is Jack Mcbride. I work for Consolidated Electrical Distributors. I'm the manager of our Metro facility right here on Cesar Chavez and Mission Road. Some of my competitors here have spoken already. CED is a large nationwide company, but each store runs individually. I manage that location and compete against Royal and Vernon, which are also CED companies, but we compete against each other, and it's good, healthy competition. I employ 25 to 30 people, and they're all local people, and City of LA business is something that I don't want to be without, and they don't either. And I guess if the whole purpose of the way things are being purchased to get the best market price, the best competitive price, we're doing that for you guys already. each one of us here that's sitting right here, each gets after each other and pretty much cuts each other's throats to get the business, to give you guys the best price.
But apparently you do it with a smile.
And now we're all sitting here asking for the chance to keep doing it. And I think if you remove that from us, you're not going to get a fair price.
Thank you, Mr. McBride.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes the public comments on this item, and I will close public comment for all agenda items and public comment at this time. And I would like to ask Deborah Ramos from General Services to please come up. And Ms. Ramos, if you could please present on this issue.
Okay. Deborah Ramos, Assistant General Manager for Department of General Services. I want to start by kind of explaining the role of the purchasing agent. Sorry, dry mouth here. Through the charter and the ad code, the mayor and council have designated the general manager of the Department of General Services as the purchasing agent for the city of Los Angeles. As such, the purchasing agent proceeds based on the competitive bid requirements that are outlined both, again, in the charter and in the ad code, and we proceed to issue bids for all the materials and supplies for all departments. In addition, the competitive bid sections of the charter allow us to piggyback or enter into cooperative agreements if we feel that it's in the city's best interest in our strive to get the lowest prices for the city. For this particular contract, it was originally issued in 2007, February. It was issued as a 5-year contract with 4 renewal options. And as each year the renewal option came up, we exercised that option, and so it was really viewed as a 9-year contract. About middle of 2015, we began what we call a market research process. We began looking at the items that the city buys, and there are thousands of items that the city buys. Unfortunately, because we've got 5 different vendors, descriptions vary between the different vendors. We tried to pull information out of our supply management system. We tried to review various sales reports that were submitted by these contractors and tried to match up like items, like descriptions, so that we could come up with what we call a market basket that we could use when issuing out a bid. We also, and Councilman Kokorian is well aware of our reverse auction process, we were also targeting this bid for a reverse auction process. So not only did we have city procurement analysts reviewing this, we had a contractor that we work with in terms of reverse auctions come in and help us to sort through this data so that we could create these various market baskets so that we could put out a bid that would, again, result in what we hoped would be the lowest prices available to anybody out there. After working on this, and I'm going to step back a minute, due to a number of issues, our procurement staff, purchasing agent staff, we've got 18 analysts. Within the last year, we suffered a number of losses of positions, people promoting to one of the proprietaries. And so at one point, we only had 9 analysts in our operation, and we were waiting for a list to be put together and trying to get fully up to staff. At the same time, once we hired people, we need to, again, go through a training process and bring these folks on board and sort of train them on what we call our strategic sourcing process. And that process is the process, like I said, where we go through, we analyze what we're buying, how much we're buying, what we're paying. We take that information and we go out and we look at what everybody else around us, like agencies, same size, some smaller, some larger, and see what are they buying and what prices are they paying. As we were going through this process, and I'm not going to bore you, and as been mentioned by a lot of people, these are what we consider our working documents. And so we don't release this information as public information until we're done with our analysis and we've actually made an award. And as you can see, a lot of this print is very small, and I've got a number of spreadsheets. And due to the resources that we have, both automated and otherwise, we had staff trying to scrutinize and funnel all of this information through various systems, whether it be Excel, Access. We have the open data portal that we use through the controller's office. We also have a software that we use, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, and I'm going to turn Melissa Spikes Cavell. We also use a system called Smart Procure, I believe it is. What we're trying to do is take all the city's spend and funnel it through these systems, and again, trying to find like items. How many widgets do we buy? How often do we buy them? What price are we paying? And so we ran into a lot of problems trying to get all that data together. And so when the contract expired after the 9-year period, which was in February of this year, we decided to extend it out for 3 months so that we could try to get something in place. And at that point, we had begun looking at piggyback opportunities, cooperative purchases, because the thought was that if we could bring in one contractor, descriptions would be uniform. We would be able to rely on that contractor to provide us with the data that we had been trying to compile from all these different sources. So that was our goal, was to bring in one contractor and, again, to ensure that we were getting the lowest price available. A little bit about U.S. Communities. U.S. Communities is an alliance of major cities and counties. City of L.A. is a sitting board member of the advisory committee there. We've been the lead agency at least once, but for this particular contract that we were targeting, L.A. County was the lead agency. And so what L.A. County did is they put together a request for proposal, which LA County and LA City operate a little differently. Here in the city, we do bids. Purchasing agent can only do a bid, and we can only award to, the lowest bidder meeting the specification, lowest responsible bidder meeting the specification, as per the ad code. And the charter. So we looked at U.S. Communities. They, like I said, LA County was the lead agency on this, and based on what they put out and based on the pricing that they got, we decided to select a mere 300 items out of the 1,000 items that we bought, and ask 3 agencies, Graybar, Granger, and Associated of LA, to provide quotes because we knew all 3 of them had cooperative purchases. Somebody mentioned today that they also had some contracts that were potential for cooperatives, and if that's the case, I wasn't aware of it, and maybe my staff was, and they had already explored it, but I can't address that at this point. But so we asked them to provide pricing based on these cooperatives for these items. We did the comparison, and we selected Graybar based on them coming in at least 22% lower than the highest priced company. Based on that is the reason we decided to select Graybar and to piggyback off the Graybar contract. At this point, we were in the process of awarding that contract. We have not awarded it yet. We did extend the 5 electrical supplies contracts through the end of October. But based on the analysis that was done and the strategy and the goal of what we're trying to achieve at this point, we would recommend that we proceed with that piggyback opportunity. I also would like to say that all 3 of the companies that we looked at do have a local presence in the city and county of LA. Granger, I believe, is already certified, and Graybar is in the process. I think they're pending at this point. I don't have a status on Associated other than when I checked the database, they were not certified with the city. Again, the way that the local preference works, each contractor needs to be certified with the awarding authority, and so the General Services being the awarding authority, we don't have a certification on record or on file with Associated. But we know their presence, we know that they're here, and so in terms of this contract, when we were looking or evaluating, we did not take the local preference, the 8%, into consideration, and because of the fact that the difference in the bids were 22%, the 8% wouldn't have had an impact at that point. There's I guess, I'm sure you've got other questions, so.
Sure. Let's open for questions a little bit. Thank you, Ms. Ramos, for that comprehensive explanation there. A couple of quick questions I have is, one just kind of popped into my head. So you're talking about 4 renewal options from the original contract from 2007?
Correct.
Right. So what renewal option are we on? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
So renewal option 4 was exercised last year in 2015, so 4, and that one expired in February of 2016.
So the ask is to just extend it for how long?
So the original ask was to extend it for 3 months, and then we continued on a month-to-month while we did this final part of the analysis and selected the Graybar contract. At this point, as of the end of the end of September, we were ready to issue out the new contract.
For how long?
It would have been initially for until March of 2017, because the county's contract expires in March of 2017, and then we would have amended it to coincide with the county's contract, which would have been another year out or so.
So it's 1 year plus 1 year renewal option.
Right. So we're talking March of 2018, essentially, and then another new contract would be entered into.
And then at that point,
RFP.
we would
Or
hope
bid.
to have gathered enough information to issue our own request for bid.
Okay. So some questions. I think you kind of explained this. The process and steps that you used to select the contract with U.S. Communities and request for bid, you explained that. Relay again what the charter and administrative code require for selecting vendors and contractors. Is it simply the lowest bid? Is that
Yes.
the end of the story?
Yes, it is. The only exception to that would be if we were to enter into a cooperative agreement.
Or a cooperative agreement? All right.
Under the charter, it requires the lowest responsible bidder in compliance with specification. It also, by ordinance, requires that the city purchasing agent determine the specifications on which the bids are based. I think a lot of the public comment stressed that the city's contract practice is by competitive bidding, but what they failed to mention is that the scheme also provides exceptions to competitive bidding, one of which is the cooperative agreements by other governmental entities. And that exception even allows you to piggyback on a contract that was not competitively bid. In the U.S. Communities contracts, they were in fact competitively bid.
Okay. All right. So that process took place. So you already kind of mentioned the information currently provided to potential bidders seeking to do business with the city and how it's disseminated. Can you just elaborate on that in a few quick sentences?
In terms of, I'm sorry.
Just ways to disseminate the information for potential bidders seeking contracts with the city or business with the city.
So once we have a contract awarded, the contracts are subject to public record, and once they become public record, then the information, a supplier can submit a request, and then we will provide that information to them. In addition, all of the sales tied to all of the purchasing agent contracts are available on the controller's open data website, and so there's various filters and queries, so to speak, that can be run to pull that data out. And so we've tried to be transparent in terms of what we're buying, but again, because the descriptions are varied amongst the different vendors and the different people placing orders, it makes it very hard to determine how many of each item we are actually purchasing.
Thank you. And then in terms of the cost comparison that you mentioned, the department did the cost comparison, correct? Not a consultant, or am I wrong about that?
You're
in-house.
correct. We did an in-house comparison. What we did is we simply provided a description of an item. We asked the vendors to let us know, are you bidding the description or the item as we describe it in the unit of measure that we're describing, and what would your cost be if we were to buy X amount? And each vendor was asked the same questions for the 300-plus items. There were some items where one vendor or another did not provide an answer, and so those items were removed. So I believe we started out with about 320 items, and it was narrowed down to about 300.
Great, thank you. All right, colleagues, any questions or comments before I make some recommendations? Mr. Corrigan? Mr. Buscaino?
I think you answered some of my questions, and this is the first time I was presented with an opportunity to go as far as being able to take this route in response to the charter, that unless there's a co-op agreement in place, you don't have to go out to bid.
That's an exception to competitive
That's an
bidding.
exception
They're
to the
required
competitive
to competitively bid. An
Right.
exception would be to use a cooperative purchasing agreement of another government.
So, I mean, this is coming before us. Why didn't we take that route 4 years ago? There hasn't been a contract in 4 years in place.
I believe that the prior contract in 2007 was competitively bid. Those contracts were awarded to pre-qualified suppliers.
Right. So when we award a contract as a 5-year contract, and we have 4 renewal options or 2 renewal options, like I said, for the most part, it's viewed as a 9-year contract. We just use the renewals as kind of a stopping point to say, okay, are we getting what we want? Do we have any problems with the vendors? You know, are they asking for enormous price increases? It's kind of a stopping point for us to sit back and say, okay, should we continue with this contract or not? And because we had the renewals available each time, because they are good partners, we continued, you know, we didn't see any reason not to continue it. And so when we reached the final renewal, the end of the final renewal option, we didn't have any other justification to continue it. And so that's why we go the extension route, and we use the extension as a short-term stopgap solution to be able to get something in place. And in reality, we had hoped to have that cooperative purchase in place by the 28th, but because we were, like I said, our staffing resources were kind of thin, it was one of the items that kind of went by the wayside, and so that's why we had originally just asked for the 3-month extension. Some questions were asked, and I asked the staff to do some additional research, and that's why we were at the 1 month, month-to-month, while they were gathering that additional information. We've also been working recently with the mayor's office, who had brought Spikes Cavell on board to try to assist us in expediting the sorting of this information.
And U.S. Communities, would you argue, based on public comment, is a local business?
So U.S. Communities is an alliance.
I'm a big supporter of,
And-
you know, supporting our own.
Right, and so
in
what it is
ensuring that-
it's LA County, it's LA City, it's Long Beach, it's all these various cities surrounding the city of LA. So U.S. Communities is not an agency that awards contracts. It's sort of a resource that we as city governments can use to help facilitate and to leverage our purchasing power as a whole. You know, sometimes when we've been in council and we've been, you know, asked questions, did you think about using DWP? Did you think about the county? And this is a way, U.S. Communities is a way for us as a city to leverage our purchasing power.
So do they use LA-based businesses?
They do. Again, because it's a competitive bid process, you know, overall, we are forced to be open to whoever wants to submit a bid. In the city, we have the luxury of the local preference, where, you know, we can use that to give a local company a one-up. But like I said, in this case, all of the agencies that we were looking at all had an LA presence or LA County presence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, thank you. So just one quick question. So your shortage of bid analysts within your department, you mentioned that's partly due to poaching. Is it also partly due to the Great Recession and the staffing reductions that were...
No, I would say poaching.
What's that?
I would say poaching.
Poaching mostly.
Right.
And how close
Our
are we
analysts are...
getting back to what we need.
Right. Today, I believe we are fully staffed, and let me verify that. No. We're at 16, so we're down 2. Okay. And I believe there is a current list that we are working. Unfortunately, our staff does qualify to take exams for water and power, and quite often they do well. We train them well. And so we go through this kind of cycle. And so we've been working with the personnel department to, you know, try to address that and try to find out, is there a way that we can maybe have a continuous type test where we're not waiting for an exam, that type of thing. And so
Clearly, we need to be very nimble since these positions go
correct
sometimes. Yeah. All right. Terrific. Any other questions or comments, colleagues?
Well, yeah, just on that last point on the hiring part, why would you need a continuing test? Don't you have an established list from whatever the last test is that you can just hire off of?
We do, but we run through it pretty quickly.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Based on people leaving. So
that's something to address. Right. To figure that one out. All right, so colleagues, what I'm going to recommend is this: approve the motion with the following substitute instructions. Instruct GSD, with assistance of the city attorney, to prepare a report on their bidding and contracting procedures, including but not limited to information related to charter and administrative code requirements for purchasing within the city, role of the city's purchasing agent, process and steps that GSD engages in to select a contractor, criteria utilized by GSD when making a decision regarding a contractor, information provided to potential contractors and the outreach done to the various businesses, and any other pertinent information related to these types of contracts within the city within 30 days. It's essentially what you verbally articulated, but putting it into a formal report.
Okay.
Without objection, that shall be the order.
In addition to the provisions that are provided for in Ms. Martinez's motion?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the instructions added to the motion as is.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, seeing as there are no objections, that is what we will do. Thank you so much, Ms. Ramos.
Thank you.
Which brings us to item 5, Mr. Espinosa.
Item number 5 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to the first construction projects report for fiscal year 2016-17.
Thank you. So we have a presenter from the CAO's office. Thank you. And there's Anastasia Tarpe-Ellis. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anastasia Tarpe-Ellis representing the CAO. Before you is the first 2016-17 construction projects report. This report recommends a total of $12.9 million in transfers and appropriations for previously approved construction projects. Of this amount, $3.8 million would be transferred to the General Services Department, $3.7 million to the Bureau of Street Lighting, and $5.4 million would be transferred to other various city funds. There are no known impacts to the general fund in connection with the authorized projects covered in this report. Any potential increases in operations and maintenance costs associated with any of the projects would be addressed through the city budget process as projects are completed. We have various representatives in attendance today to address specific project questions that you may have.
Thank you. Anything else to add from anyone? We're good? All right. Thank you so much. So a question in relation to the Arbor and the Lourdes project. Has the scope been defined for the Arbor project that indicates how the $2 million in MECLA funding will be spent in relation to the G2 acquisition?
Councilmember, we'll have to report to you offline on that. Unfortunately, the analyst who's most familiar with that project isn't able to attend today, and I don't have that detailed information available.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's
But we'll get back to you this
really
week
dense,
before it goes to
and
council.
It's not easy. So it's not easy to just have a transfer of that kind of information. I have a hard time keeping up with it. I'm chair of Arts in the River. The river. It's hard enough.
We appreciate your understanding.
Yeah, no problem. So here's, colleagues, any questions about this? It's the MECLA funding toward the acquisition of G2. And what we will do, what I'm going to recommend is, let's see. Yeah, we'll hold that part of it out is what I'm going to recommend. So, but any questions?
I would only object. I don't see one project in my district, so.
Yeah, we have to figure that
Come
out.
on.
That must mean they're all humming along.
Okay, I think that we're
Nicely
moving.
done.
Good.
Nicely
Good.
done. That was awesome. Actually, since you raised the point, Mr. Biscayne, just want to clarify, since the Whitsett Soccer Complex is included in 1A, no change, everything's going apace, right? We're good to go with.
As far as I know, yes, that is a project. Of course, we've been in development for many years. It was originally funded by Proposition K, and the scope was expanded. So we've been continuing to provide the funding to that project as it's needed. Again, I will go ahead and confirm with the analyst that there are no issues and communicate with your office, give a confirmation.
Very good. Thank you.
Terrific. So having said that, recommended action would be approve CAO recommendations B through RR for the capital projects, approve CAO recommendation A for the bond projects, approve CAO recommendation A for the capital project regarding the MECLA pre-approval, except for the $2 million for the Arbor Lourdes line item, and instruct the CAO, BOE, and any other relevant city departments to report on the potential impact of that project and timeline that the MECLA funds would be spent. So we'll hear that in committee in greater detail next time around.
Certainly.
Without objection, that shall be the order. All right, that's what we'll do. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Espinosa, does that complete the agenda? Actually, I have two, right? I didn't move item 2 on consent after the public comment card. So that is what we'll do without objection, is move item 2 on consent. I neglected to do that when it was heard.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to clarify for item number 4. You made a recommendation. Would that recommendation stand alone, or would you also like to approve the 4 recommendations on the motion?
Approve the motion with the following substitute instructions. And to what degree, or to Mr. Krikorian's concern, what degree is the body of the motion substituted? It's just greater clarification is what I believe.
So you're replacing your instructions with the original instructions.
All right, so we're good.
That's the intent.
Okay.
Wait, so maybe I'm not clear then, because the motion called for a number of items specific to this process.
Which?
And what I understood the paragraph that we read today to be essentially a informational report back. So I'm not sure where that exactly leaves us.
If I may, the objective was to clarify the irregularities in the motion. The motion itself as written is factually incorrect, and the instructions, the moving clauses, some of them contradict the current provisions in our charter and the admin code. So the substituted instruction is to clarify that so they can educate the council as to the purchasing agent's authority already approved by the mayor and the council in the charter and the admin code.
Okay. Well, what's happening in the meantime, in the interim, while we're waiting for this general informational report back?
You mean what's happening with respect to the contract?
Yeah.
The contract, the existing contracts, as staff reported, have been continued through October 31st. They have not made the award to Great Bart, pending those extensions.
So we'll be able to hear that report back.
If you want to schedule it prior to that, since this committee only meets once a month, if you want to schedule a special meeting before October 31st, or staff maybe could be persuaded to extend an additional 30 days.
Well, because otherwise the whole issue seems to become moot while we're waiting for that informational report back. So, I mean, I think it's important to hear this report back. I just want us to be able to have the option of taking meaningful action based on that report one way or the other.
Right.
So I would say, I would recommend either, whatever is preference of you, Mr. Chairman, that either we extend the status quo a bit longer to allow that report back, or we hear that report prior to the expiration of the existing contract.
Well, seeing as it's likely we'll do a special meeting based on item 1.
We can have this
We
heard
could
at the same
also,
time.
that would then modify my instruction of within 30 days to basically within a couple of weeks. But
In 2 weeks.
that should not be a stretch because it's really memorializing what was the verbal report. So how about if I modify that instruction then on item 4 to be within 14 days instead of 30? So that when we have the special, then we can hear it, since that is also a sense of urgency related to that issue.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Thank you
So
very
are we
much.
good on that?
Understood.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.